Okay, we are live. Yeah. So we were doing the verse number 17 and 18 we had done. We will do the 19th and the 20th verse of the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And in 17th and 18th chapter, Bhagavan having mentioned that there are two Purushas, and these two Purushas are essentially the Para and Apara Prakriti. One is the Jada Varga, the Karya Varga, the material realities, which are easy to see and locate. And what are these? The birds, animals, plants, rivers, everything we see, which are modifications of that Avyakta Maya Sakti of Bhagavan. And this Avyakta Maya Sakti is referred to as other Purusha. Why the Purusha word is referred to them? And this was explained in a very beautiful way, saying that look, the same Brahman, there is just one reality called Brahman, and the same Brahman with name and form, it just kind of imagine. It is an imagined reality, and with that, these things sort of manifest. You have this Maya, and from the Maya, you have this Para and Apara Prakriti, the Jada Varga, and the Shukshma Karana Swarupa, the Abhyakta Maya Sakti. So you have Karya and Karana, the causal principle, which is Mula Prakriti, out of which you have the three gunas, and then out of which everything else emerges. Everything else emerges. The whole set of material realities. And we have discussed that in the Srusti Krama, how that happened. Bhagavan has explained that I have Ashtadha Apara Prakriti, and then he talks about the Para Prakriti. Then he talks about that is referred to as Kutastha, he explained here, because it's very difficult to locate it. And that Kutastha is in all of us. That is the causal principle. And this causal principle, without it, we will not be able to explain why the three gunas keep activating us. So, if the three gunas are there in us, the causal principle behind the three gunas must be in us. And that is Maya or Avidya, that Mula Prakriti is actively sort of ensuring that all these things are happening in the individuals and, of course, all the animals, birds, and everything. That is what Bhagavan explained. So he mentioned that in the verse number 16. Dvavimau Purusho Loke. These are two Purushas. Khyarascha Khyara Evacha. The Khyara is the Jada Varga. Akshara is that Mula Prakriti. Khyaraha Sarvani Bhutani Kutosto Khyara Uchyate. Akshara is the Kutastha, and that is Maya. It's not Chetana. As some of the people are tempted to refer to the Kutastha. Of course, Kutastha in another context is kind of referred to as the the self which is present in all of us. But here specifically, Bhagavan is explaining that the Kutastha here is actually referring to is a reference to that Mula Prakriti or Maya Sakti out of which the whole sansara is created. And then the verse number 17, he makes it very clear that these two Purushas that I have told you about are not me, because I am Suddha, Nitya, Buddha, Mukta, that is what I am. I am Sarva Prakashaka, the Prakriti, the Mula Prakriti, which is Kutastha, or the Jada Prakriti, or the Bahya, whole Sarva Bhuta, everything that is you, these are Prakashya. They are lit up by me. The Chaitanya that I am the source of all lights, he earlier said that you look at the sun or the moon or the fire, they cannot light up that Satta Swarupa Brahman. They are lit up by that Satta Swarupa Brahman. So the Brahman or the Atma is Sarva Abhabhasaka. It lights up everything, it illuminates everything. Everything is illumined by the Atma. Atma is not illumined by anything. And therefore, he says, I am, this is Purushottama Yoga, this 15th chapter, this is a summary of all of Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, he says, Uttamaha Purusas Tvanyaha. That is me, Paramatma iti udahritaha. and that is what is Paramatma. So the Purusha words are also used for the Maya and all the Jada Vargas and others. But don't you get confused. The Parama Purusha, Purushottama, that Paramatma is me, and I'm different from them. So please don't get confused with that. Yogo, yo lokatrayam avishya. Now, this is a very difficult thing to capture from our perspective, given the fact that we have very limited minds. We may be tempted to believe that the sansara is a place like a dog returns home, a human being returns to his house. What does that mean? A bird returns to this nest. What does that mean? The nest, the house, and all these things exist prior to the return of that particular person, isn't it? So you go to a riverbank. That means the riverbank is already there. That is how we look at it. Now, the moment he says, Yo lokatrayam avishya vibhartyavyaya ishvaraha. So I take care of everything, this whole sansara, by sort of entering trayam avishya. I sort of make use of this lokatraya, bhuva swaha. That what does that mean? That means that these realities exist and Bhagavan enters them and activates them. That could be one way to look at it. More, that's not what it is meant here. That is the only challenge of correctly understanding what Shastra says. So Bhagavan will say that I entered into all human beings. Doesn't mean human beings exist earlier. Because we cannot understand what Srishti is all about, Bhagavan is using this kind of dualistic language. This is dualistic language. Because Bhagavan, as we have discussed again and again, is Desha Kala Bastu Paricheda Shunya. So where he will enter, that is why he is Achala, he is Niskriya, because there is no place where Bhagavan is not present. So to be Chalamana, there should be some location where he can go. But he is Achala, that is what I've studied. Then how can be Achala, Niskriya, Satta Swarupa, and there is no Sajatiya Bheda, there is no Vijatiya Bheda, and there is no Swagato Bheda like the tree. The tree is different from its branches. The Brahman has no avayava. It is not avayavi. It's not a physical thing. So that kind of Veda we cannot think. There is no second Brahman, and therefore we cannot say that there is a Sajatya Veda. There are two, three gods. No, only one. No Vijatya Veda. Sometimes there is a temptation to think that the Maya or the Prakriti or the Srishti or Sansara or Prapancha, these we can say is different from Brahman. No, there is only one reality called Brahman. How do we explain this samsara? They are appearing. They are appearing is real. But just imagine, even from a physics point of view, and we have discussed that even earlier, what happens to thousands of solar systems which turn into a black hole? It has no mass, it's just a field of energy. So, what happens to all these realities? Where do they go? They just convert into energy, isn't it? And there are several new theories which are coming up to explain how the samsara sort of have. Once you give a certain event, a definite event has happened, if you imagine, then everything else physics can explain. That's one of the reasons why they are imagining something called a Big Bang theory. Similarly, in Vedanta, we are talking about Srishti Prakriya to explain how everything has come into the picture. Truth of the matter is that the fundamental reality is for Vedanta, the message of the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedantic message, or secret message here is that there is that Satta Swarupa that alone exists. Everything else, yes, they exist, but as phenomenal reality, not as a fundamental reality. They appear. And like for example, we see rainbows. Rainbows, do they exist? No. They just appear. Mirages appear. Clouds appear. The sky remains what it is. So many things appear. And people are born and they go. What happens? You just imagine your childhood and this whole world in which you are a child, you are playing, you're going and you're meeting your parents, your uncles and aunts and everything. That reality, is it there today? No. But that reality is real in your mind. Similarly, Vedanta says that this phenomenal reality is in our minds, we are participating in it, but it is drishta nashta svabhava. It is appearing and it vanishes in no time. It absolutely doesn't take much time to vanish. But at the same time, he says this is avyaya, this pravaha, because it's birth and death. Because this whole prakriti or prapancha is very difficult to remove. That's why it's referred to as avyaya. Similarly, Maya is referred to as Akshara. Doesn't mean Maya will always be there. That means there will be no moksha, no liberation. Because Maya continues to be there, then how can you get liberated? This is no. Till Atma Jnana. This Sansara Vriksha, this is Aswatha Vriksha, is very hard to remove. He's saying that use your Jnana Chakshu. Asanga Sastrena. Drina Chitva, you have to remove it. Of firm hands. Use the sharp weapon of what? Viveka. Viveka Vijnana. You sharpen it on the stone of Viveka and then use that knife or that sword or whatever. You try to chop this tree up. How do you chop it off? You chop it off with knowledge, with Jnana Chakshu. It's a manner of seeing things. Once we correct our understanding, once we have a different way of looking at things, then Vedanta starts working in us. That's all is being conveyed in this chapter. And he's trying to say that I'm Uttama Purusha because I'm different from them. And I sort of am the one who is holding and sustaining. First, he explains that he alone, earlier, what did he say? I am the Prithvi. I ensure that the Prithvi holds you people. I ensure that you get crops to eat and all kinds of food grains. I ensure that you get juices to drink and water and everything. I'm the one who is present everywhere. So whether it's your vyavahara, your physical activities that you call mama, papa, whatever, and that you exist, both these aspects, your presence and your activities, your vyavahara, you owe it to me. And that is one clarity that we need to have. Without Ishvara or Brahman, we neither exist nor we can be active or do anything. At the same time, he's saying, please understand that these activities and your presence, the way you understand, is not perfect. At an intermediate level, that's fine, but it's not perfect. What is perfect? You do everything, but try to understand that beneath it, what you cannot see is the only reality. That is Ishvara or the Brahman. That is the only thing. But outwardly, all these things are appearing the way you have a lot of clouds appearing in the sky and vanishing after some time. It's like the classroom into which thousands of students enter, do their coursework, and they just leave. The classroom room remains the same. Similarly, you have all these things like you have these bubbles appearing in water. Huge millions and millions of bubbles appear in water and they vanish. And absolutely, they are neither real nor unreal. What is real? The ocean. Bubbles, yeah, they appear, they are also real, but not fundamentally real as much as the ocean is. So these are the ways, these are the examples using which we are kind of sort of enabled, we are kind of inspired, motivated to look beyond what appears as real to us by these scriptures. So he says, Yo lokatrayam avisha vivarti avyaya ishwaraha. So that is the real avyaya, that is the Ishwara that I am. That we have done the Shankara Bhashya already. So I would just quickly do the Madhusudana and we'll do the last two verses of it. Uttamaha Utkrishtamaha. Uttamaha, we had done that, discussing yesterday. What is the meaning of Uttama? Uttama is which is beyond tamas, or what is Gunatita. Uttamaha. Ut plus tamaha. Ut. Udgataha. Tirohita tamas yasmat. That could be Uttama or Gunatita, beyond all the Trigunatmika Maya, because he leaves behind this Maya and its game, the Karya Varga. That is this whole thing, Kyara and Akhyara. Karya is what we can see, this Thula, Sukma, whatever, and that Akhyara is Kutastha, very difficult to recognize. That's why it's called Avyakta. And then both of them The master, the king, who is sitting there quiet, not doing anything, everything is happening because of his presence, that is the Atma. That is what Vedanta says. Therefore, he says, Utkrishtatamaha Purushaha tu Anyo. And that is, I am different. Anyaha eva Atyanta Vilakshana. Anya means what? I am completely different. Don't confuse me with Maya. That Trigunatmika Maya. So that wisdom, principle of wisdom, or Prabriti, or Alasya, Pramada, or Prabriti, Anarambha, all these things that we discuss, these three qualities, are Mohatmaka, Sukhatmaka, and Dukhatmaka. Rajas is Dukhatmaka, it makes us very stressful. There's a principle of dynamic activity, Sattva is a principle of balance, and Tamas is a principle of inertia. We discuss all that. He's saying, I'm beyond that. So I'm Atyanta Vilakshana, I'm completely different. And why, he'll explain. Abhyam. What is that Abhyam? From these two, what is that these two? The Kshara and Akshara Purusha. The Para and Apara Prakriti. Kshara Ksharabhyam. Kshara and Akshara. Jada Rasibhyam. Because both are Jada. Prakriti is also Jada, as per Sankhya, it doesn't have Chaitanya. It is, as we have discussed, it's like Prakriti because of the Sannidhi of Purusha. It's like a certain section officer in an office behaves like the CEO because CEO is kind of relying on him. All files move through him. So in the absence of the CEO, everyone sort of takes his or her advice because she knows all the files where is what. But she's not the CEO. She doesn't have the powers of the CEO, but she exercises certain influences. Similarly, this Maya Sakti has no independent existence. It's Jada, but it behaves as if it has life and chaitanya, everything. It is borrowed, reflected intelligence of Atma, Paramatma. Therefore, he's saying Jada Rasi Vyam, Ubha Bhasaka, Ubhaya Bhasaka, the one which actually gives existence to the two. That is the Paramatma. Bhasaka Tritiyaha, that is the third thing. I am beyond all of them. Tritiyaha Chetana Rasi Ityartha. And what am I? They are Jada Rasi, both of them. The Karya Varga and the Karana. Karana is the Maya Sakti. And this Maya Sakti has three aspects: Sattva, Raja, Tamas. Right. That we have discussed in chapter 14 and now in 15, earlier in chapter 13. Now Bhagavan says, I'm beyond this. Atyanta Vilachana, completely different. And what is saying? I'm Chetana Rashi. Chetana Rasi means that particular thing that completely, Sachidananda Rupa. That is what I am. Paramatma iti hridahrito Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamayabhyaha, Panchabhyaha, Avidya Kalpita, Atmabhyaha. So these are the Kalpita. We had discussed that yesterday. So I am beyond that. Paramaha Prakrushta, all Kalpito. I am not imagined. I am Vastava. I am real. Brahma Pricham Pratishta Ityukta Atmacha Sarva Bhutanam Pratyak Chaitana Ityataha Paramata Ityukta Vedanteshu. So I am referred to as Pratyak Chaitanya and Paramatma in Vedanta. So we had discussed that yesterday, that like the tail of an aircraft gives this balance, this Brahman sustains all of us, and that is what is the Pratishtha. That Bhagavan is saying, I am the Pratishtha of that Brahman. What is he referring to? That Savdika word that we're referring to is Brahman. He's saying, oh, I am verily present here, just before you. Don't confuse me as a human being. So he's not referring to the Krishna, the avatar. He's referring to Param Brahman, who is speaking through the mouth. And Krishna is to Bhagavan Swayam. That's what the texts say. That he's present there. And he's saying, no, don't distinguish between, there is no Param Brahma which is different from me. And this is Pratyak Chaitanya. You are also not different from me. That's what he's sort of trying to tell. Avishya Sokiyaya Maya Sakti Adhishtaya. So because of this Maya Sakti, I sort of ensure this whole Srishti comes into picture, and then I do Bharana Poshana. Satta Spurti Pradhana. And it's not that he's giving us biscuits and tea and stuff like that. No, that's not what it's meaning here. He's saying, I give you existence and the Spurti, that appearance, that Spurana, that energy, that vitality, whatever you have, it's all coming out of me. Spriti Pradarthena Dharayami Poshamaya Sakidrishaha Abhyaha Sarva Vikara Shunya Ishvara Sarvasya Nyantya Narayana. I don't have any Vikara. The Vikari is Maya. Vikaragrasta, everything is your mana, your sarira, your mind, buddhi, everything. Because that's a modification of Maya. And, of course, in Sankhya, the Mula Prakriti, they saying that the Purusha is neither Vikari, is not absolutely, there is no Vikara, nothing. And and then you have this Prakriti, Vikriti. And this Mula Prakriti is Prakriti. But the Ishvara is neither Prakriti nor Vikriti, is beyond that, even in Sankhya, and same here. Sarvasya Nyanta Narayana Sa Uttama Purusha Paramatma iti irdahata iti Anvaya. Now, in the next verse, he is kind of establishing what he has already said. We had also discussed that yesterday. He said that Yasmat, and instead of explaining it, in case we have any doubts, Yasmat Kharam Atito. I'm beyond this whole, Kharam Atito Aham Aksharad Api Chetasa. So I'm beyond both Khyara and Akshara. Atosmi Loke Vedecha Pratita Purushottama. And that is why I worship as Parameshwara in both Loka and Veda. That means people know it. That's obvious. But also, if you look at the Vaidika text, this is what the Vaidika text says. And there was a bit of commentary of Madhusudana that we hadn't done yesterday. Yasmat Sharam Karyatvena Vinasina Mayamaya. From where? He's saying, I'm superior to Khyara and Akhyara. So he is now elaborating what is Khyara and what is Akhyara, what he has already done, but he's kind of repeating so that we understand it better. That Khyara is the Jada Varga, the Karya Varga. Karana is Maya Sakti, right? Now he's saying Karyatvena Vinasinam Maya Mayam. Vinasinam, it's mortal. It has an end date, expiry date. Why? Because it's Vikari. It has a beginning and an end. Karyatvan, because any product you see in real life, whatever you pick up, anything which is made gets destroyed after some time. It cannot be permanent. Mayamayam sansara vriksham aswatahyam. That aswatha, that tree that he talks about having aerial roots and normal roots and very difficult to move it, that huge tree that he's saying, that aswatha, that sansara vriksha, which is inverted, the roots are above, and then the branches are down, that he mentioned all about that. And the desire are the shoots coming out of it, right? Kama bija, and all that we discussed earlier in this chapter is sansar vrikyam aswathakyam, that name of this, that banyan tree which is inverted. Atito atikranto aham. Yeah, so don't confuse me with that tree. I'm beyond that tree. Parameshwara Aksharaadapi. And also, what is the causative factor, which is the causal secret of this Aswatha Sansara Vriksha? What is that? Maya Sakti. I'm also beyond that. Maya Khyad. And that is what? It's named as Maya. Akhya is name. So the name of that Sakti is called Maya. And then it is not easy to see. It's not manifest. It's like energy. We see the electric bulb, we don't see its energy. Similarly, Maya Sakti is not visible. That's why it's called Avyakritat. So it's not Vyakrita, it's not manifest. So it's Avyakritat, Akhyarat, Parataha Para. And much beyond that. Iti Panchamyantat Aksharapadena Aksharat. That is the fifth vibhakti, right? Fifth case. Why? He's saying Shrutya Pratipaditat Sansara Vriksha Bija Bhuta Sarvakarnadapi Cha Uttamaha Utkrishtatamaha. So Akshara, from Akshara, compared to Akshara, that's what he's saying. And Madhusudana Saraswati is saying that this is what is also Pratipadita in the Shrutis, in the Upanishadic text, in Vedantic text. Pratipaditat, whatever is mentioned, and what is it known as? Sansara Vriksha. From that, Sarva Karanat, all the Karya Vargas, there is only one Karana, and what is that Karana? That is called the Maya Shakti. This whole Sansara Vriksha, whatever you see in this whole Sansara, it is a modification. These are all modifications of that Maya Shakti, and Bhagavan says, I'm even beyond that causal principle because I'm the boss of this whole game. Neither cause is real nor effect is real. What is real? Only me. Now, the magician comes on the stage and he just has a handkerchief in his hands and he materializes a bouquet of flowers. and then converts the bouquet of flowers into a snake, and then throws the snake into a bag and brings out a baby out of it. And then he says, "Where is the mother?" He goes and knocks at the wall and puts a screen or something, and then pulls the screen down, and a beautiful lady comes out and says, "Oh, my baby, I am the mother of this baby." And we all clap. We are astounded. This man has materialized a mother, a child, and he materialized a snake out of a bouquet and a bouquet out of a handkerchief, and then suddenly he makes everything vanish and he starts smiling. Neither the beautiful woman who is the mother of this beautiful child, nor the snake, nor the bouquet, nothing is there, not the handkerchief with which he started. So, what was the Karana? His Jadugari Shakti with which he showed it. And the Karya Vargas that we saw. None of these are the magician. Magician is playing around. He is not the magic. We see that. He's just creating it with his delusional power. He makes these things appear real to us. That's why Thakur Ramakrishna Paramahansa used to always say, Jadugar ही सच है, जादू सच नहीं है. We get deluded, excited, tempted looking at the jadoo. So when we see this beautiful lady coming out of the wall and picking up the child, we say, how lucky is this little baby? There is such a nice, angelic, beautiful mother to take care of him. And if oh, she's a beautiful child, she deserves to have a very attractive little boy as her son. And then thank God the snake is away, so the child is safe. Actually, he has converted the snake into the child, isn't it? Yeah. So that's how it is. These are all illogical things, but they appear as real. But this magic is not real. Bhagavan says, please understand, neither the Karya Varga nor the Karana Varga. These are my kalpita things, these are imaginations. But you are in that imagination. It's like we are play acting different roles within a dream. So far, this dream is going on, we are all participating in it. Dream is over, everything is over. When the whole solar systems, millions of solar systems, now they are finding, and it's very frightening, that roughly like they're saying something like 200 billion galaxies. I mean, frightening numbers. And now new theories are coming. Whatever is happening here, it could be happening billions and millions of, I mean, millions. I can't tell you the exact numbers. I don't want to embarrass myself because I'm not a physicist. But they're saying that there could be replication. Whatever is happening here could be happening millions and millions of light years away. There could be a parallel universe where everything is happening. This is looking at different mathematical imaginations. Vedanta laughs at all these things. It doesn't reject a single thing of it because we can actually accommodate everything here. Bhagavan says these things are appearing. You want to get into the details regarding how they are happening, fine. Spend your time. I'm not stopping you. So far as you have the steadfast dedication to the ultimate truth, which is that there is only Sachidananda Swarupa, that fundamental, nameless, formless reality called the Brahman. If that is, everything else and everything else's presence can be conversed about. We can talk about it. But if we don't admit that there is something which sort of holds and there is some sort of a think about it. We are talking about galaxy or the universe and everything, but what holds this universe that you're talking about, the material universe? Vedanta says that you have to have, and that is conscious. Physics is talking about a material universe. But Vedanta is talking about this material universe being sustained, supported, and everything is going on against the background of a conscious reality. Without any conscious agent, does anything happen? Wherever you see, of course, there are material things you see that maybe there is some landslide or this or that. These are cases that we refer to, but generally everything is happening. So there is some intelligence because of which all these things is so many things which are completely ordered and everything. So they think that there is an intelligence which is ensuring all these things are happening. It doesn't have a name, no form, how it works, nothing. You can do your guesswork. I'll not stop you. Bhagavan says, therefore, I am saying Purushottamaha, Utkrishtatamaha Ataha, Kshara Ksharabhyam, Purusha Upadhibhyam. these Khyara and Akhyara, the Karya Varga and the Karana Varga, the material manifestations and the secret causal principle behind it, both are certain names and titles, labels, sort of put in this particular, on this consciousness called the Brahman, and they become Maya and they become the Apara Prakriti and Paraprakriti. These are names. Fundamentally, there's one undivided, unified reality, which is conscious, and that is Brahman. These are kind of not aberrations, but these are appearances. They have their own signs as to how they appear, and we have discussed that. So he's saying Purusho Upadivhyam Adhyasena. This is a kind of imposition, like you see a snake on the rope. Similarly, this whole sansar appears real, but the only reality is Brahman, which we are not being able to see, and we are imposing this manifest reality on that unmanifest fundamental reality or meta reality, if we can use that word, which we don't manage to see. Bhagavan is advising you better do that. Adhyasana Purusha Pada Vyapadesa Vyam. This Purusha word is mentioned. There are two Purushas, Akhyara and Khyara. Uttamatvad Asmi, but I am superior to that because I'm Atyanta Vilakhyana. I'm completely not what these Purushas are kind of being referent to. So Asmi Bhavami Loke Vede cha, and that is quite prasiddha, prakhyata, pratita, Purushottama iti sa Uttamaha Purusha iti Vede Udahritaha eva loke cha kavita Kavi Kavyadav, so the poets, and so Loka here doesn't mean people conversing, but the record of conversations of people. He's referring to literature and history and conversations which are recorded where there is reference to the Purushottama. He's referring to Puranas, he's referring to many other texts other than the Vedas, which are Paurushya texts written by human beings, because Vedas are considered to be all Paurushya. It's an authorless text, there's no author for this. Hariryathha ekah purushotamah smitah ityadi prasiddham. Now he's beautifully sort of bringing this discussion on the chapter 18 to a close from his own perspective, because Madhusudana Saraswati is a great Krishna Bhakta. So he's explaining this. Karunyataha naravad acharataha, out of kindness, this Brahman, which is nameless and formless, it behaves like a human being. How? Behaves like a human being through the appearance or avatar of Lord Krishna. Pararthan parthaya bodhitavataha. And in order to educate this whole sansara, all of us, he's speaking to Partha. Partha is an agent for humanity. He's using Partha as an agent to explain to us, like Thakur Ramakrishna always says, in order to teach a lesson to the daughter-in-law, the mother in the house shouts at her own daughter because she doesn't want to misbehave with the daughter-in-law. She's a new entrant in the house, and maybe the arrangements in their house is different from this household. But how do you educate her? She might feel bad. So what she does, she shouts at her own daughter so that the daughter-in-law listens and figures out what are the rules and regulations in this household. Similarly, Bhagavan is having a conversation with Arjuna, and that's being recorded. Why? What was the point? For our benefit, so that we get educated. So he is talking to Arjuna, keeping us in mind. Bodhitavataha Nijam Ishwaratvam. He's speaking in these two verses that I am Purushottama. Satchit Sukheka Vapushaha. Sat Chit Ananda Sukha. That is Sachidananda Rupaha. Purushottamasya Narayanasya Mahima Nahimanameti. And there is no comparison. There is nothing with which you can measure the greatness. Why? Who will measure? What is measurable? There has to be somebody to measure, but you are not outside the Brahman. Who will measure what? This whole infinite reality is called the Brahman. And who is going to measure it? There has to. And what is the measuring scale? There is nothing other than Brahman, and therefore there is no measuring scale. That is what is very obvious here. And then he's saying, then he's kind of talking about a lot of yogis and tantrics and meditators. He's saying, look here, I have studied the Bhagavad Gita and I am dedicated to Lord Krishna. And therefore, my problems are over. It's up to you how you want to handle it. Therefore, he's giving alternatives and making fun of that. He's saying, Kechin Nigriha Karanani. Some people By withdrawing their senses, they're doing Hatha Yoga. And they're focusing on chapter 6, whatever was advised of the Bhagavad Gita. Kechin Nigriha Karanani. Karanani is Indriyani, and including Manas. Visrijya Bhoga Masthaya. And then they do everything, all these, whatever is the Vishayas, whether it's food or house or the desires, Bhoga Icha, everything. They do Visarjan, they sacrifice all that. Yogam Amalatma Dhiyo. And they are doing what? Asthaya Yogam. And they have full faith in the Yoga Sastras. They want to study Patanjali Yoga Sastra and focus on chapter 6 here. And then they want to completely meditate on not Bhagavan, but on the yogic principles, the signs of silencing the mind. They do that, and he's saying, okay, fine. Amalatmadhiyo yatante, and then they are very purified in their mind, and they do a lot of yatna to get liberation. But he's saying, do you know what I do? I know there are people who are great yogis, but I'm a poor guy. He's doing, this is called reverse nabari. So he's doing Narayanasya Mahimanam. But I am devoted to Lord Narayana, the Param Brahman, Ananta Param, Ananta Param Aswadayan, Anantam Aparam. In that infinite, that ocean of bliss, Sachidananda Swarupa, that ocean of bliss, which you cannot cross over, Param Aswadayan. I have tasted that bliss from that ocean, that Ananda, and then that Saram Aham tu Muktaha. I have tasted the blissful taste of the ocean of God's grace. I am liberated, my dear friends. You do your yoga. I don't have to do anything. I have studied his Bhagavad Gita, the 15th chapter. I studied very carefully, and I have figured out my only destination is Lord Krishna, and I've surrendered to it. I am already liberated. But I see my friends who are great scholars of Yoga Sastras, they are doing a lot of meditation, sitting in the caves and in the ashrams. Let them do it. They're very pure hearted people. I have high regard for them. Oh, what to do? I'm already liberated. Why? I've studied my Vedanta and I'm surrendered to Lord Krishna. I got no problems. Evam Nama Nivarchana Jnane Phalam Aha. Now, having studied this Purushottama Yoga, what is the benefit? He's saying, Yo mam evamasam mudho janati Purushottamam sa sarvavid bhajati mam sarva bhavena bharata yo mam evam asamudha janati. There are certain conditions. He needs to meditate on me, do my bhakti, because that was the question in the end of chapter 14, last two verses. You are saying that by meditating on you, I can be gunatita. That was the technique. And how to meditate on Bhagwan, he mentioned in the Purushottama Yoga Nama 15th chapter. And he said that to us right now. And there are different, this Aswata Bhutya, the Sansara, how it is blocking us and how we can get over it, and what are the things, and what is this Khyara and Akhyara Purusha, and beyond that, how Bhagavan is there. He said all that. If you can follow what I just told you and meditate on me thus, but you should be free from mudhata, viparita bhavana, faulty, wrong, opposite, thinking in opposite direction. If you are so, janati purushottamam. If you know the ultimate reality, the purushottamam, sa sarvavit. If you know me, you know everything. Why? Knowing what? Everything can be known. By knowing Atma. Why? Everything is a modification. With the help of Maya Sakti. This is a deflection. This is a projection of that one unified reality. Knowing that, everything else you know. Like you know gold. So whatever necklace you have, look at, you know how good or bad the gold is because you are an expert in finding out the quality of the gold. The necklace and other things, okay. You are more interested, is it good gold, bad gold? You can figure it out very quickly. Similarly, the source of all these material appearances, manifestations, is that one undivided reality. And Bhagavan is saying, Sarvavid, so is Sarvagya. Doesn't mean he knows everything about the samsara in all the forms that the samsara manifests. No. He knows what is the underlying reality of the samsara. Bhajati Mam. And then he meditates on me. He follows me, Sarva Bhavena Bharata. Then he knows what? The Krishna is not different from this whole samsara. The samsara is a manifestation of Lord Krishna. In that, Lord Krishna is only Param Brahman. So, and then he also looks at himself. I am also not outside of Lord Krishna. When I'm meditating on Lord Krishna, I'm meditating on my own self. Lord Krishna is not somebody who is different from me. He's my very soul. He's my very existence. He's the truth that is manifesting in me. That's a very deep meditation. There is also bhakti. The Dvaita bhakti is different, where there is a viraha yantrana, like a lover running after another lover. They have some beautiful, methods on how to meditate on Lord Krishna, not a problem. But the Vedantic meditation is equally very intense, and there is a great amount of love involved here, because you are meditating in Lord Krishna as your very consciousness, and he's deep, he's very intimate, and you love, you might love your parents, your brothers, your friends, daughters, and everything. But Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, what did Jakyavalka say? A wife loves the husband because she loves herself. She loves the son because she loves herself. If she is there, she can love anyone. And Vedanta says, look here, Lord Krishna, the Parambrahman, everything that you're talking about is not different from your pure consciousness, but you should know how to reach there. Then the dualities vanish and you are liberated. So, this whole bhakti is a kind of a truth oriented meditation on consciousness, where Bhagavan, Bhakta, everything is kind of one luminous, pure, infinite, nameless, formless reality, called that Satchidananda Swarupa. Not a problem if we can do it. And I personally think that perhaps will give deeper, bhakti than the Dvaita Bhakti. Dvaita Bhakti is also fine, not a problem. But here, this is a much deeper meditation. But to start with, of course, you do Pratikopasana, you read books, you go to temples, that's not a problem. But the ultimate level of meditation doesn't require any name and form. The Krishna is not different from the little consciousness that is manifesting in us, because it's deriving all its energy from that great infinite source of light and energy and everything. So he's saying, Mang Sarva Bhavena Bharata. Yo Mam Ishwaram Evam. Evam means how? Yathokta Nama Nivarsanena. The way I have mentioned about me now in this 15th chapter. Please think about it, read, and then meditate. Asamudha Manushya. The moha grast. He should not be moha grasta. He should be beyond mudhata. That delusional acceptance of sansara is real. That is why he's saying asamudha, because sansara sach lagega. So Vedantic meditation is not possible. Eva ayam kaschit Krishna. If you think, ये कौन है? अर्जुन को कौन बोल रही थी? ये एक अवतार थे. ये कोई कृष्ण नामक व्यक्ति है. If you think like that, then you won't get anything. He's telling Arjuna, Asamudha means what? Manushya, Asamudha Manushya. Eva ayam kaschit Krishna. हाँ, ये कोई कृष्ण नाम का व्यक्ति है, कुछ बोल रहा है मुझे. मेरा cousin brother है. Then you won't get it. If you see me as a human being, your playmate and all that, no, forget it. Because this is, I'm speaking to you as Param Brahman. I have a name and a form. I can take any name and a form. But you don't look at me as some Krishna, no. It is Samoha Varjita. That kind of religion you don't have. Don't look at Lord Krishna as any guy, an avatara, very fond of gopis, and all the time having these rasalila with Radha and playing flute and all that. These are for bhaktas. They do all these imaginations. Not a problem. But as a Vedantic person, you are looking at the Satta Swarupa, the Chaitanya Swarupa. Janati ayam Ishwara eva iti purushottamam prag vakhyatam, the way it has been explained already, sa mam bhajati sevate, mera seva karta hai. But it's not with tulsi and chandan and all. That also you can do, not a problem. Sarvam imam sarvatmanam bitti, he knows everything. Sarvam idam kalvidam brahma, in that sense. In sarvam vasudevam iti, in that way, vetti iti sa eva sarvagyaha. He sees everything is born out of me. So that particular reality, once you have the key to open that gate to that reality, you become sarvagya. That's what in sarva bhavena prema lakshanena. Look, the bhakti is coming here. It's jnana bhakti. The jnana eva bhakti here. The very Truth orientation itself is an act of love. Why? Because you love truth and you are truth yourself. There is unity. There's not a problem. Prema Lakshyanena Bhakti Yogena He Varata Ata Yaduktam. And that is why he's quoting a couple of places. So, okay, we have 10 minutes. We'll be able to finish the next verse as well. Mam cha yo avyavicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatyetat etetan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. You remember this towards the end of chapter 14. Iti tad upapannam, and that is possible. If you think like this, if you meditate, yathoktam brahmano hi pratishtaham, and he said, don't get confused. I am the foundation of that Brahman. So Krishna and Brahman are not two things, it's one and the same. Iti tad api upapanna taram. This is even easily understandable. If you understand chapter 15, these two statements will become very easy to grasp. Iti tad upapannam. And then he's saying, Chidanandakaram Jaladaruchisharam Shrutigiram. Now, this Bhagavan, who is his embodiment of pure consciousness and bliss. Jaladaruchisharam. And how is he? He appearing with, he has this blue color, this dark skin, Lord Krishna, Jaladaruchi. And then what? Saram Shrutigiram. And then he's whatever beautiful verses are there about Brahman. All these verses are about him, Shrutigiram. Bhajastrinam Haram, all the bhaktas, his great devotees, the Braja, the gopis, they consider him to be the necklace on their neck. Because whenever they take the name, which is a metaphoric way, actually Lord Krishna can't be a necklace of anyone. What does it mean? Because you wear it on your neck because they are all the time saying Krishna, Krishna. Right? Like the necklace is very close to you, the name Krishna is very close to their neck. They're speaking all the time saying Hare Krishna, and therefore he's like the necklace on their neck. And then what he says, Haram, Bhavajaladhi Param, and then he helps people cross over the ocean of Maya and the Sansara. Kritadhiyam, Bihantu Bhubharam, Bidadat Avataram Muharoho, Mahobaram Baram Bhajata, Kusalaram Bhakritinaha. He's saying, oh my all friends, you are so intelligent. You have done a lot of punya. That's why I've come to study Bhagavad Gita. And you so quietly enjoyed chapter 15. You must have had a lot of punya. But now, if you want to actually remove this bhubhara, the pressure of the sansara, and this whole pressure of ignorance, you want to cross over, and this avatar that he has taken, this avatar again and again to help us, let's meditate on him. Idanim Adhyayartham Stuvan Upasangharati, and he's concluding this chapter. Iti guhyatamam sastram idamuktam maya nagha etad buddhva buddhiman chat kritakrityascha bharata. My boy, my friend, my dear. Iti guhyatamam, again he's saying, is the secret of secrets. Sastramidam. This is just kind of stuti to motivate the student. This whole science of who am I that I told you in this chapter 15, because it's a kind of summary of whole of Bhagavad Gita. Uktam Maya, it's said by me, O Anagha, you Papa Shunya. Because if you had a lot of Papa, you will not be able to listen to chapter 15 till the very end of it. That's what he's telling to Bhagavan. Bhagavan is telling to Arjuna. Etad Buddha, if you understand this, Buddhiman Shat, if a person is there, he will be truly liberated, he'll get true wisdom. And what he'll become? Krita Kritascha. Jo bhi Krita Krityascha. Krita Kritya. Whatever is Kritya, Kartavya, will be done by him. And we say that wo bahut khush ho gaye, because there is nothing more to be done. So there's a person, he was struggling, he had a little daughter and she grows up and he's not financially very well off. He manages and she gets a little job somewhere, and this father is borrowing and working very hard, and then he's being able to give a big feast because the daughter has got a job and she's having a very nice dowry free marriage, and the father is celebrating that with a big feast and telling people, my daughter has grown up, she's successful, and I'm celebrating her marriage. He feels he has done everything in his life because maybe he's a person who lost his wife, he had to raise that daughter. It could be a great feeling for a man. Or it could be a son who has got a job, so the parents feel very good. So he feels Kritakritya. He is in tears, he's very happy. Now, what about the Vedanti? The Vedanti becomes Kritakritya when he knows the self, when he has Ishvara Darshana. Not as a person with this blue color, with a flute and beautiful face and lovely eyes. No, it's not talking about that. Because, yeah, that can appear. You can think about so much. If you think too much about somebody you love, that loving face, whosoever is coming to your mind, can appear in your dreams. That is what is mentioned in some of the texts. But that is what is not we are talking about in Vedanta. We are talking about Bhagavan is non-different from us, and you have that meditation of the self. The name form bhakti is one phase. The ultimate bhakti goes beyond that, and Krishna becomes the very consciousness out of which we have come here, and we are going to go back to, and that pure consciousness is beyond all names and forms. That is pure luminosity, and that's Satchidananda Swarupatvam. Whatever words you use, because words don't apply, words don't reach there. Avang manashogochara. There is no way they can be Vishaya of either mind or words. Words will not adequately describe, mind cannot adequately fantasize about it also. And therefore, Nama Rupas and Bhakti and other things you're doing, they are imperfect vehicles. But these vehicles are useful for ensuring the spiritual ascent in us so that we are close to that ultimate truth. And that we have to accept. Krutakrtyascha Bharata. So this is the end of, and this quickly let's do the commentary. Iti anena prakarena guhyatamam rahasyatamam. This is the most secret thing. Sampurnam Sastrameva Sankhepena idam asmin adhyaye. Whole of Bhagavad Gita is kind of summarized in chapter 15. Maya uktam. He anagha avyasana. So there is no vyasana in you, no bad habits. You are nispava. Etad buddhva anyopi yah. The way I told you, and people have heard, and this is going to be kind of paraphrased and recorded by the wise men in the form of Bhagavad Gita, kasit buddhiman. If there is any intelligent guy, buddhiman, atma jnanavan syat. If there is one guy who has some paroksha jnana of atma, he studied a bit of Upanishad, and he understood what I said here, kritam sarvam krityam yena ना पुनः कृत्यांतरम यस्य अस्ति और कुछ करने के लिए जिसके लिए नहीं रह गया. There is nothing else left. He has done everything. It cannot be physical works. Why? Whatever you do, there'll be more works to do. But there is one thing if you do everything, because Bhagavan said there are different wells of water you have. But Sarvato Samplutu, okay, if it's full with water, are you looking for a well? So you have Atma Jnana, Krita Kritya. There's nothing else to be done. That's what he's saying. Na puno krityantaram. Anything else to be done? Yasya asti sa krita krityasya syad. Then he says, this is a Manu, actually, Manu makes that statement that in case of Brahmin, he can do a lot of karma kandas, but if he doesn't have Atma Jnana, he's not liberated. I mean, he may have mentioned it as social category, but let's take it out of context to make it historically relevant to us. Who is a Brahmin end of the day? Anybody who's trying to, not the caste guy, huh? This is the stupidest way to look at the word Brahmin, but here's somebody who is interested in knowing the Brahman. He might do ashram, house, car, everything. But if he dies without having any semblance of self knowledge, what is the point of all this? That is what is hinted here. विशिष्ट जन्म प्रसूतेन ब्राह्मणेन यत् कर्तव्यम तत्सर्वम भगवत तत्व वेदिते कृतम भवेत. कितना भी काम कर ले, if a person is born in that spiritual thing, but this is a traditional way and we have to secularize it, this interpretation. That's what I'm saying, that if you are lucky to have some good education and then you are being able to study Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita, then that will be the way to look at it and interpret. And that will be historically more appropriate, not the traditionalist way of looking at it, as if caste and this and that is stupid. Because if you look at it, who are the people who actually have interpreted the text in the most spiritual and modern contemporary way in modern India? Swami Vivekananda and Sri Aurobindo. Both were Kais, they were not Brahmins. So actually, don't take it, but they were the greatest Brahmins. Why? Because they were Brahmanishta. So therefore, if you say विशिष्ट जन्म प्रसूतेन ब्राह्मणेन यत् कर्तव्यम तत् सर्वम भगवत तत्वे वेदिते कृतम भवेत्. So everything is achieved if you have Bhagavad Tattva Jnana. न तु अन्यथा कर्तव्यम परिसमाप्यते कस्यचिद् इति अभिप्रायः. So, because jnane parisamapyate, but earlier Bhagavan also says that everything sort of ends in self-knowledge. He Bharata tvam tu mahakula prasutah swayam cha vyasana rahitah iti kula gunena swagunena cha etad buddhva krita krityo bhavishyasi iti kimu vaktavyam iti abhiprayah. Now, this is again a traditional interpretation, as if Lord Krishna is telling to Arjuna, you are very lucky, but we can again put it into our historical context. Madhusudana Saraswati says that you are born in a very rich aristocratic family, you have studied Sanskrit, you are a great warrior, you have the benefits of good upbringing, exposed to literature and everything. If even a normal guy, a poor Brahmin, if he cannot do yaga and all, doesn't have enough money, but he focuses on Upanishads, he's fully liberated. What to talk about you? You have all the time and energy and all the sadhana. You have all the, wherewithals to master this whole thing that I talked about. So why not you? That's what I'm saying. As if this Bhagavad Gita is being addressed to some elite students, that is how the teacher will talk to him. You are all very highly qualified people, and average people can understand who am I, why not you? That is the way of mentioning. So that is how it comes to an end. And there is a bit of his Bhakti thing, Madhusudan Saraswati, but he's kind of mentioning that, whether you're whatever religious denomination you're coming from, but that is not so sort of relevant to us. And that is how the 15th chapter has come to an end, and we'll sort of enter into the 16th chapter on Monday. Tomorrow is off because it's Sunday, and we'll make again. But that's an easier chapter because we'll talk about the same three gunas that we have talked about in 14th chapter. We'll discuss that in the context of different ways in which we do different kind of activities. What is sattvika, what is rajasika, and what is tamashika, we'll study so that in real life we can actually make use of the insights which are offered in that chapter. Philosophically, it's not very difficult to grasp, but practically it's very relevant. So we will equally pay good attention to that chapter going forward. I'll put the YouTube link on end here, and thanks for listening. And you can ask questions. So we'll do the Santi mantras.
Om Swamiji. Swamiji, Guhyat among, is it mentioned because of it's about the same, I mean, like knowledge, Brahma, Vidya?
No,
Because in chapter 9 also it's mentioned.
yes,
Like, Guhyatamam.
yes. Chapter 9 also mentions that this is Guhyatama. Here it is specifically mentioned because this one, I mean, this is Madhusudana Saraswati, and is kind of emphasizing on this aspect. And I saw even other commentaries. Of course, I thought that the Sankaranandi would have been very useful, but I didn't get into it because there's a lot of textual richness which will not be palatable for common audience. We can do that separately. But here, the interesting part is that this is a summary, and this summary is not focusing on anything other than Bhagavan in a way which is palatable to us, because he's sort of repeating it. And even earlier he had mentioned that, but that these are all in specific contexts. And this particular 9th chapter is great, but even I tell you, 13th chapter to my mind is actually uh, the base of all Vedantic insights in Bhagavad Gita. That's why 13th chapter is the best chapter, people say. Then 15th is also the best chapter. 9th is also the best chapter. These are all dealing with the deep secrets of Vedanta. And that's why Bhagavan says this is Guhyatama. Because if you do it, because he himself says that I'm summarizing kind of all advice I've given in Bhagavad Gita here. And there is a reference to this whole samsara, how it all happens. He's jumbling everything together. And therefore, perhaps one of the reasons why he's referring to this as Guhyatama. Okay, so